Welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. This meeting is being recorded, so please read and abide by our code of conduct when attending these meetings. We do meet every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And for anything that we don't get to during these meetings, or if there's anything that arises from the team or from the community, we do have office hours as well that meet every second and fourth Thursday, also at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. Today's date is April 12th, 2021, and we have a few announcements here to share. We posted a blog post just earlier today, which was written by Garrett Cheadle and some support by me, but it was mostly all Garrett. And I encourage you to click on this and go check it out on the website at carvel.dev and our blog post, our blog section. It's a high-level walkthrough of the kapp-deploy command, and that's broken down into 4 separate stages. So we'd love for you to check that out. And if you have any feedback you wish to share on that item, please do so in the Carvel Slack channel in the Kubernetes public workspace. Carvel is also hiring a staff engineer. So if you're interested, if you know anyone that's looking for this opportunity, we really encourage you to apply, and also feel free to reach out to us again on the Kubernetes public Slack workplace in our channel. And if you have any questions about the position, we're happy to help guide you in the right direction. The next thing on our announcements, we do have a release that happened last week, kapp-controller 0.18. And the release notes are also in the agenda here. And please go ahead and check that out. If you have any feedback to share with us on that, again, directing you over there to the public Kubernetes workspace, the Carvel Slack channel. We would love for you to engage with us there on anything you have regarding Carvel. And with that, I will kick it on over to Aaron Hurley, who is the lead engineer for this team, and he can go over the status updates and the rest of the agenda.
Alrighty, let me share my side. Well, I do appreciate that. The compliments, Nancy. Not really a lead engineer as much as I would like to be, more of the manager supporting the teams. Cool, let's go into status updates. So Schemas v1 type checking still very much in progress. Anyone want to share any updates from the past week?
Yeah, we're definitely making progress. There's a number of ways in which we're maturing how some of the data values are being handled as we are pushing, as the schema feature is pushing up against that. We believe making it better. So we're in the process of taking on some of that refactoring work. So we think it's actually not just adding the schema feature, but sort of improving the tool overall. So that's still work in progress, but we're pretty excited about some of the improvements that are being made that we're incorporating with this. I don't know if others have more color or if that kind of covered it. Okay, cool.
Cool, thank you. And then we also threw up Schemas v2 is actively being defined right now. So a couple links there. One is a proposal that's in progress, the unannotated YAML as data values. And then the second one there, support exporting Open API from YTT schema, is another piece of work that's actively being defined. So feel free to click and learn more. Anyone want to share anything further on those right now?
For the Open API one, I expect to be able to get some definition around that during this week. We can have like eventually some stories and some idea why we are going to do this, and more or less like the idea on how this is going to happen.
Yeah, the unannotated YAML is in part supporting like an integration situation where there's a upstream tool that wants to use YTT to process templates, but it doesn't want to demand of its user that they need to somehow know about the YTT internals. So providing just plain YAML as inputs. Yeah, and that's going along. We're actually like seeing like potentials for improving how data values are handled overall. So stay tuned.
Alrighty. Let's see. Also dropped in a new item this week around release tooling. I think image package was the initial tool that motivated some additional tooling here, but from some light observations in Slack, it seems like we might have some release tooling to do that around a few of the tools. I don't know, Stephen or Dennis, if there's anything else y'all want to add right now. Cool. And then kapp-controller side, we have the package manager API MVP still very much in progress. Eli or Daniel, anything y'all want to share from the past week?
I don't know that much has happened on the packaging side specifically. I know Daniel recently made some updates to like app debuggability, which will be leveraged by some of the packaging APIs. So
yeah, I think the key piece there is really one of the things that'll be interesting is being able to get people to issues that arise with the packaging CRs to errors a bit quicker. I think right now we sort of have some very, very simple statuses for these resources, and we're hoping that some of the improvements that we've made for apps themselves can just be shown directly as part of the packaging status or the packaging CR statuses. So hopefully should be able to help people avoid this extra step of having to first see the package CR that has failed and then actually jumping over to the app CR to actually like get that information. So hopefully we'll have something pretty soon for that.
Cool, thank you. And then the last item we have is kapp-controller enhancements. Those are some of the, I guess, non-API MVP related enhancements, GitHub issues that we've been working on. I think as Nancy showed, 0118 addressed a few of the enhancements that were recently prioritized. And if you're ever interested to see what's next, the backlog is always the source of truth for us. If folks have any topics that they want to talk about today, whether it's triage help or general discussion, please add them here. Cool. So we can dive into the backlog then and discuss some stories. Oh, I guess, is there anything else anyone else wanted to share? Alrighty.
So just like the proposal for the renaming of image package, I said it in Slack. We postponed the date. The due date was last week, but there was a new scenario that came into light and we postponed it to this Friday. So we'll have one more week to comment and to hash out the last parts that are still open.
Cool, good call out. Alrighty, so on to this week. I think we can start with schemas. And we have this story at the top. And Carrie, I see that you opened this. Would you want to talk to this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so this is a story that came out of the schema work that we were doing recently with type checking private libraries. So we decided to pull this work out from that story into a separate one to cover the specific case when you are overlaying a data values file and the overlay fails. So if you're using the experimental schema feature right now, we want to present a schema error, gives you more information and the specific violating lines in your schema document where you can find the issue and like just quickly fix it. So this story is to report a schema error rather than an overlay error when a data values overlay fails. So going over the first acceptance criteria there, so reporting a schema error. The situation is that you have a schema file which has some key defined like dbcon and port, and then your data values file has a key that does not exist in your schema. So you'll see there dbcon and then new key doesn't exist in the schema. When you try to then run YTT with that schema file and the data values file with the enabled experiment schema flag, then you should see a schema error. And currently you only see an overlay error. So that's to implement that. Any questions, clarifications?
I'd like to clarify why this was pulled out as a separate story. I know that some work had been done on this previously, so maybe we can shine some light on what caused us to want to separate this.
Yeah, so I think others here can chime in if there's more color that you want to add. I believe our first pass implementation of this was not completely correct. There were a few cases where we were type checking the document prior to overlaying. So we never captured some of the errors that you would see from overlays. And then we went through some refactors and then came up with another solution and decided to just postpone this work completely until this story, since it wasn't closely related to the work that we've been doing so far. We wanted to pull this out and basically tackle this more holistically so that we can make sure that there are edge cases being covered and we don't have an implementation that isn't going to catch specific overlay cases.
Should this be a bug then instead of a feature? Because the way you described it sounds like a bug on the prior implementation.
I think it could be either. The way I was thinking about it was this never fully worked. So it still needs to be implemented. But I guess you could also think of it as like this never fully worked and we need to fix it. So does anybody feel strongly about whether this is a bug or a feature? I think there's also an important thing to note here, which is that this is all protected behind the enable experiment schema flag. So as we've been going through the work for schemas, this has been sort of protected behind that flag and not released. I'm not sure if we had the assumption that this was completely working prior to this.
Personally, I would lean on into having this as a bug because the description here helped, but it helped me when you explained what happened before, what was happening before, and that's where like I understood where the problem was. So it kind of felt like this was the behavior and it was not correct, and this is the behavior that we want. So in the end, that's why it felt more like a bug to me than really a feature, because in the end, this feature should have been implemented, but because there was a problem, it wasn't as expected. So.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. We can change this to a bug.
Would you also like to point us to see if we uncover any, I don't know, complexities that individuals may be aware of that the whole team isn't? Cool. Maybe give a thumbs up if you're ready. Alrighty. 3, 2, 1, go. So we have 2 3s and 4 2s. Either side want to speak to it?
I've got a couple of points of context. So one is that I think the prior efforts were like serious, thoughtful attempts, and I think part of what I learned through that was that getting to a solution that just works for all cases is challenging. So to me, there's just this point of really trying to think through all possibilities. I don't mean it like that intense, but like there's like the whole realm of things. The other one is in we were just talking just prior to coming on the community call that there might be some like overlap between the data values, that unannotated data values proposal that we talked about in the prior section that could have an effect on this. So that's sort of like a piece of ambiguity. So that's why the additional complexity.
Sorry, I did not understand your last point, because it felt like that you were talking about complexity that will derive from a story that we'll have to build in the future. So that story should be the one that handles that complexity, maybe not this one, because we don't know how that's going to be implemented yet.
Yeah, it's sort of like there's some ideas that are coming out of the proposal that might sort of change the complexion of this story. So more precisely, if it turns out, and it's not clear, it's not 100% certain yet, but like we're tossing around the idea that by default, a user would provide data values as a raw YAML, unannotated whatsoever. In fact, if you include annotations, that there be this flag that we say data values file, and that the thing that you pass into that flag is the name of a file. that contains raw YAML, plain YAML, and no annotations. Like it's an error if you include annotations. With that constraint, then the cases that made this work difficult at the moment we were like, how are we going to pull this out, actually relieves some tension. It actually makes a number of cases that were wrong, like, go away. That is, there's an interaction between, hey, if I included annotations, overlay annotations in my data values, you really can't tinker too much with that inside YTT itself. And that was part of the trick, was in order to not have overlays fail, we needed to have them be more permissive. But then that changed the meaning of some of the annotations within that overlay. But if we separate it, and data values are plain YAML, and then you continue to have the ability to overlay on top of data values, but those are what we know of today as data values. We would refer to those as data value overlays. Well, then it's less surprising, makes more sense that I might get an error from the overlays portion, from the overlay mechanism, than schema, because I've opted into overlays. So it has a lot to do, this all is about, well, the big value of schema is that we can provide error messages that are much more actionable, clear, and direct you right to where the issue is. If data values are raw, that is, they're plain YAML, then and therefore avoid the problems that this story was pointing at, then you wouldn't be surprising if you got an overlay error. So that's what that bit of context is about. Hope I explained that clearly.
Does that mean that we will not allow people to provide data values with add data values as part of like the -f flag?
No, you would. All that stays. But what we would do
So
is
the
we would
complexity is the same,
change.
right? Nothing would change because you'd be able to also provide the data values with a -f key. So the complexity would still be the same, because basically what we're going to add is the possibility for the user to provide the data values in a different way.
Yeah, and the one thing that shifts there is if they continue to use an overlay, then it would actually be okay to show an overlay error and not have to show a schema error.
So if that is the case, then this story would not be needed, basically. So
Yeah, I think that might be true. I think there's an ordering thing here.
So I wonder if we want to point this based on the current state of the world, and if we do need to implement this, how would we point it? And then we can repoint it once we know more about like how schemas will behave. Does that make sense?
I love that idea. It's a good stipulation.
I propose not doing it because that's like the next story on the backlog. So whenever someone finishes YTT, so the next YTT story and goes for this, it's going to pick up this story. And it looks like we don't want to implement this until we have the other story done, or at least like in a good state. So I would not point it and just put it down in terms of priority.
We could point it and then change the priority. Like prioritization and pointing don't have to be coupled. We could point this and prioritize it like in the way that you described. That's all.
What is the assumption we want to make if we're going to point now?
That data values would continue to be supplied by an overlay. Like things are as is. I think that's what Carrie was suggesting.
Okay. Do we want to throw again with that assumption in mind? All right. 3, 2, 1, go. So we have 4 3s and 2 2s. So we switched. I'll mark this one as a 3 to go with rough consensus. And maybe we should talk about where we should place this though. Because it sounds like we can get some value if we wait for the proposal to get written.
Yeah, at this point, we could go as all the way up to the document experimental schema feature, like right above that. Yeah.
Okay,
And pull it up as needed.
that sounds good. Cool. In that case, is this next, I guess this is the next unpointed story. Do we know if this one's ready to go? Type check, command line.
Ready to go.
Cool.
Yeah, I can give a quick overview of this for everyone. Purpose of the story is to confirm that we've implemented the type checking of including data values through the command line. So there's 6 scenarios here, and this story was pulled out when we realized that there's a lot of similarities between private libraries, the way private libraries and their data values gets checked, and the way that command line data values gets checked. But that wasn't in the scope, so we wanted to pull that out to ensure that we are covering all our cases here. So the first scenario, there's 6 different scenarios. The first 3 are all in your root library scenario with your schema and your data values, all relating to your root library. And then the last 3 scenarios are all in a YTT library. So your schema would exist in your YTT library, and the command line data value that you're providing is specifically targeted at that library. So there's scenarios 1 and 4, which are both conforming, and scenarios 5 and 2, 3, 5, and 6, which are all non-conforming. And a nuanced bit of information here is that there's 2 different ways to provide data values through the command line. One is with the normal data values or data values env flag, and then there's the data values -YAML or the data values environment -YAML. And when you use the one that doesn't have the YAML at the end, so just the standard data value flag, it'll read in your key and value as all strings. So this is problematic in type checking because we don't want to change the behavior of our data values flags, but we need to be able to type check against these data values provided. So with that in mind, we know that when we're using --data value or --data value environment, those are going to be read in as strings. So providing an integer, like in the second scenario, would fail because it's saying 42 as a string doesn't match the same type as 7 as an integer. And then in the bottom of that scenario too, you'll see that if you use data value -YAML flag, just scroll down a little bit, Aaron, you'd see that that should pass our type validation. So these scenarios are repeated for your root library and then your YTT library. And yeah, I only used the data values and the data values YAML flag because in YTT, those code paths in relation to their environment variable counterpart are the same code path. So data values and data values environment would be read in the same way, both as strings. Any questions about this?
Should we throw points? All right. 3, 2, 1, go. All twos. All right. We'll keep moving then. So this should be plenty for schemas work. We will try and parallelize as much as we can. Let's see. What is next to discuss? Maybe ones that are not in an epic. Yeah, this is a good one. So rename, this is for image package. Rename a flag from include non-distributable to include non-distributable layers. So additional layers is providing a bit more preciseness as to what this flag does. And we prioritize it fairly high, just because this feature isn't that old. And if we're gonna introduce any sort of breaking change, then we just wanted to try and do it as soon as possible. Folks have any questions about this?
You'd probably remember to update the documentation on the website.
Cool. Anything else? Just throw points. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Got ones and a 0. All right, we're gonna go rough consensus of 1 there.
Steven just signed up for that story. That's what I saw.
Already done.
I'm okay with that. In terms of complexity, I don't view this as too bad. It's going to be a little tedious. We've got some changes to make, but I think we know how to do all of those changes.
And the question is, can you do this in a one line in Bash script?
Probably not the docs. Well, maybe the docs.
You can. It's just a replace. This is a 0-point story, but we've been pointing documentation as a 1 point as well, so that's why.
Cool. We'll keep it there. We do have this image package story next, which is provide copy progress feedback. Do we know if this is actually doable, or is it blocked on GGCR?
It's still blocked. Hopefully
Okay.
we'll get a release any day.
Is it worth pointing still?
If it gets released in this week, there is value in pointing today.
Yeah,
Let's see.
and the work had been merged, right? This is just about waiting for release. So there, it's an incredibly small probability that they would pull it for some reason.
Oh yeah, very small.
So, you know, we want to do this.
Okay. I don't know. Thoughts? Do you want to point this today or defer to future? We have time. There's no further topics.
Let's just point it. It shouldn't take too long.
Yeah, yeah, it's ready to go.
Cool. So this is providing copy progress. I know that, let's see, I haven't looked at this in a while. So I know, Dennis, you had worked on the GGCR fix to provide the capability of providing status updates while it's in progress. Are there, I don't know, any additional bits of context here that would be helpful for the team?
I don't think so. I think it's, yeah, when we're writing an image, we want to get information about the progress of that image being written. And right now, once we get the GDCR released, there's a way to know how many bytes of all the images or every image has been uploaded. And you also get information about the total amount of bytes for the image or images to be uploaded. And it's just a matter of somehow displaying that in a user-friendly manner. There's libraries out there that will easily plug into this. So if you want a progress bar or other ways of doing it, there's like libraries you could potentially look into that should plug in nicely. This person was asking, hey, I would like to know, ideally an ETA as well. That might be a bit trickier to do, but the current upload divided by the total upload is really, really trivial.
So we're going to include, what is it, NyanCat? Like, so the little rainbow display progress bar?
Definitely.
That's critical, right? Critical.
Very critical. We can't ship otherwise, yeah.
I think we should define what UX we want before going with this story, or just even pointing this story. I feel like we're missing some details on what we want to do.
Yeah, that's a good call. Maybe we just use this issue. We'll keep it open, but we can add some comments here to try and drive definition there.
What I've seen done before was that someone would pick up this story and it would just add some acceptance criteria to it. That way it would give us more information on what we are expecting to see.
So whoever picks it up, just add an acceptance criteria. Maybe we can add a comment to remind.
Oh, I got lost there. So in order to point it today, we wanted to clarify, but we're saying, I got lost in the part where it's like whoever would pick it up would add acceptance criteria.
Maybe I misunderstood Joao, but that's what I thought I heard Joao say. Maybe he said in the past, people who do it.
No, like what I saw it doing is when someone picks it up, like when changes the story from Carvel triage to accepted, they add acceptance criteria to the story. And I'm not sure like what is the label on this story right now. That was what I meant. But if it is already Carvel accepted, someone should pick it up and add some criteria to it before we point, because I think that might skew the pointing. I don't know. If you really want to have like times, maybe that will skew the time, like the hour pointing. I don't know.
Yeah, now I'm clear that like in the past we've had stories like this, if like mechanically where we might even edit the description and like throw a ruling line underneath what the users provided and then just add acceptance criteria like right at the top or as a comment, just like somewhere in here, like clarify what definition of done is for this. So yeah.
Is this enough of a note for right now? Cool. Okay, we'll leave this one unpointed for now then. If anyone is motivated to add, what would they think a nice UX here would be, feel free to add a comment here. Cool. Well, I think that's going to be plenty of runway for the week. Anyone else have things that they want to chat about today? Alrighty. I think we're gonna wrap up early then.
So if anyone wants to chat about the proposal for the rename of the image package, since we have some buffer, if you have any questions, maybe that like now that we're all online, you can just use like the next couple of minutes to do that if that's something that y'all are interested. If not, we can just wrap it up.
Anyone have any questions top of mind? I know that there's quite the history on this.
I do.
Yeah.
So I did have a suggestion in there that I thought it'd be interesting to turn over about, it's in here somewhere. The essence of the idea is, what if we said, yeah, let's see if you could scroll down. It'll be at the tail end. There we go. Here we go. Chewing on a general approach. Oh,
Sorry, I think there's lag.
it's okay. Yep, that's okay. Perfect. So it says, I'm chewing over general approach. So that comment, I was wondering if we could chat about that idea.
Yeah, definitely we can. So what we're like before, like the story that's up there on this particular part, we are talking about the copying when you're trying to copy from one registry to another, and you want to add namespaces and sub namespaces. That's basically the part of the URL between the registry and the name of the image. Like all those folders, like for example, ggcr allow you to have a bunch of folders there, while Docker Hub only allows you to have one, I think, and Quay allows you to have one or two. I'm not 100% sure. So we are talking about in the proposal, what we're proposing is that when you're copying an image from a registry that contains those namespaces, we would just ignore all of them, and you just use the name of the image and just attach the name of the image to the registry. So basically, what do you have on the examples that we can see there? So an image that it comes from origin.io/myimage would be copied to a destination.io/myimage, while an image that would come from origin.io/some/path/myimage would be copied to destination.io/myimage. So as you can see there, like there's a squishing of that. And the name of that strategy that would enable this by default, we're talking about by default behaviors, not behaviors that you can then override. So this is what the tool would do for you by default, by default without you doing anything. So, and the name of that strategy was called maintain origin repository. And then we talked about like, what does repository mean? And unfortunately, the OCI spec does not define what a repository is. So there's places where repository is the name of the image. There are places where the repository is the full namespace, namespace 1, namespace 2 / image name. So there's no like a coherent way to talk about this. So this also made it a little bit more complicated to define. And there's a comment from Eli, some places below, that talks exactly about that. So, but this was basically what we were talking about, the area. And the proposal that John made there was to, why don't you talk about your proposal?
Cool. The spirit of the idea is, what if we do our level best to support the rename that the user asked for, but across the board, if there's any problem, we go to write an image, and let's say that target registry turns out not to support namespaces and it complains, or just some other error relating to like a failed copy, that we degrade. We have a fallback where we go back to the the today behavior, which is, okay, well, it's going to land in the same, in sort of a like hub repo, that is the name of the bundle itself, the repo that contains the bundle image, and then further tag it with what the path plus repo name would have been if it would have been successful. So the suggestion is have a fallback strategy we know will work so that the copy will succeed, and then tag this thing that had to have that fallback treatment with enough information that you could potentially recover if you want to for some reason, like, I don't know, if like do a rename, whatever it is, like you would at least get that human readable information attached to the image, even if it's in a repo that, you know, isn't that. And then you would gain back the benefits. If your registry supports namespaces, you get namespaces. If it doesn't, then this is sort of like that default fallback. I'll pause there.
So does anyone have any question about what the issue is and what John is proposing? Okay, so personally, I think it's an interesting proposal. I see a big con to it, and that is we would be scattering the images. To be fair, I see two cons of it on it. We will have a scattering of the images, and we'll have an non-reliable and eventually non-reproducible way to copy, because then you could have for the same bundle images in their origin or the place that they should be by the strategy, and there would be other images that would be underneath the repository of the bundle. So you'd have like the images would be scattered all around, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing. So that's one con that I see here. The other con is that when we started this, it's not really a con, it's more like, I'm not sure if it's going to be helpful. And that is like the second suggestion you have there, that we could add a tag to the images. In one of the comments that bootstrap us to this proposal was the fact, like we propose to people that you can have a tag with the name of where the image came from, and you could use that. And we had pushback on that, people saying that that doesn't give us enough information, because we'd have to consult the registry to see all the tags that that particular image has in order to find out what the image is. So that in the end, I think it would be good, but in the end, nobody's going to use that tag for anything. And it's hard for people to find that out, the tag. So so those are like, out of the bat, those are like two things that I'm like, not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think we were trying to figure out, okay, what happens when there are, like, let's say you're going merrily along and you're copying images over, everything's cool, and then you hit on one where for one reason or another, it's not going to work. Like we were exploring, like, okay, well, do we want to roll back? Like, could you even roll back? Do we even want to like be in the business of like what would rollback mean? And so, I feel like it would be more helpful. So like I totally get the point about like things would be scattered. That's true. I think a scattered copy is better than a half done copy, is where I'm like driving toward. So in the case where it's something didn't go quite right, at least the overall operation would succeed. Yeah, I'll just pause.
Yeah, I was making the assumption that the tag wasn't for the operator. It wasn't for an operator to say, oh, this is an image that lives in a base in a root repo, but really it's a repo that originally had a namespace. I thought it was to address your first issue with it, Joel, which was the non-reproducible aspect. I thought it was a way to, if you copy to registry A Docker Hub, you lose the namespace, but you have that a bit of metadata information to say it was meant to have a namespace, not just a repo. And then if you copy to GCR, you don't have a tag, but you could copy from Docker Hub to GCR, look for the tag to see if it has a namespace, and then in GCR save it with a namespace and repo. I thought it was to actually deal with your first issue.
It could be used for that. It is an attempt to try and retain that information. Like, albeit, like Joao pointed out, like in some cases, it's not great. Like you have to go get the tags in order to get that information. So,
yeah, I don't know if you
but
can rely on tags too heavily, but you know, some people rely on tags for signing and verification. So maybe it is reliable enough.
yeah. And maybe another, this is just a minor thing, but I think this might be useful. Steady state, this kind of operation is ideally automated. So I think in general, I'd find, I don't know, I just throw this out there, see if this sticks. Like, I think it would be more helpful that an operation would, this kind of operation would succeed in an automated environment than air out because, oh, there was you know, some configuration wasn't quite right. And yeah.
So for this particular place, I don't think, like, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reach out to some of our users that brought up this issue and try to understand what would be their preferred solution in here, and see if they would prefer to have a situation where at least the images are copied, or if they just would prefer to have a have it fail. Because like I was reading this, and like even if we think about the DryRun command, the DryRun command is not going to show you any information. So like it's going to show that it's going to copy from like A to B, right? But it's not going to ensure that that's going to be the place where the images will end up. And that's the part that I don't like about this strategy of, well, we should at least try to put it there. Because in the end, the DryRun, it ends up being interesting in some cases, but it is not going to be true in other cases. So if we're going to go with this approach, then I think we should reconsider the DryRun command.
Would it be something maybe where we could detect certain kinds of things are just not going to work, like the namespace, for example?
Yeah, so like that was what I was trying to talk. I was talking to the GGCR people right before this meeting, and they told me that the only option is to try to push a manifest, and I don't think we want to be pushing manifests just to see if it works. So
You can push a blob with an incorrect digest, and then it's going to fail, but you're not going to get a 401 or 403. I'm just kidding. I mean, the thing about this composable nature of the proposal is, you know, if we just decide to go with the strategy is just called maintain origin image name, like that's a strategy that says, all right, I just care about the artifact name. This strategy is only going to copy artifact name, and you can just split off the namespace and repo concern as a different strategy, and we can move forward. But ideally, we'll just plug into this proposal nicely anyway.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, good thinking about in terms of trying to make the strategy name make room for that.
So another change that we have here, I know that we're getting up in time, but another change that I added Friday was on the, when you're doing the overrides and you have your destination, there's like a subtle change there where if you, when you do your override, if you start with a slash, it works like the file system. If you started at slash, assumes that the image will be, the location is going to be the registry.io slash in the place that you put there. But if you do not start with a slash, it assumes it is a relative location. So what happens is that the image will be placed in the same namespace, if namespace exists, as the bundle itself. So if the bundle is inside registry.io/a/b bundle, and when you do the override, you do not put the slash and just put image name 1. The image name 1 is going to be in registry/a/b/registry1 image 1. So that's like also a change that eventually could be an interesting add-on to like a third strategy where you just say like, okay, just put everything into this particular place or something like that. That could solve some of these problems. But yeah, I like the idea of eventually just renaming the strategy and just creating the possibility, leaving open the possibility of adding more strategies that could help in the different scenarios.
Anything further on this topic? Any other discussion to be had? Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us for this week's edition of the Carvel community meeting. If you're watching this from home, we would love to have you join us for a live rendition of this. We meet every Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. We also host Carvel office hours every second and fourth Thursday of the month at the same time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we would love to see you at one of those opportunities to come and share your thoughts on Carvel or meet the maintainers or just kind of listen in on what we're working on. And with that, hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.